All right, today we're going to start reading The Boy Who Dared by Susan Campbell Bartoli. The Boy Who Dared by Susan Campbell Bartoletti. I can read. So this says, just as the Nazis are rising to power, Helmuth Huebner, a German schoolboy, is caught up in all the swashbuckling bravado of his time. The handsome stormtrooper uniforms, the shiny jackboots and armbands, the rousing patriotism all serve to draw him into this bright new world full of promises and hope. In the beginning, his patriotism is unwavering, but every day the rights of people all over Germany are diminishing. Jews are threatened and their businesses are being destroyed. The truth has been censored and danger lurks everywhere. Anybody can turn on you, and the world has turned upside down. Patriotism means denouncing others, love means hate, and speaking out means treason. How much longer can Helmuth keep silent? Told in flashback, Newbery Honor Book author Susan Campbell Bartoletti magnificently explores the life of a heroic German youth who dared to stand up against the Nazi regime. Death Row, Plotzen Prison, Berlin, Germany, October 27th, 1945. Day 265. It's morning. Soft gray light slips over the tall red brick wall. It stretches across the exercise yard and reaches through the high barred windows. In a cell on the ground floor, the light shifts dark shapes into a small stool, a scrawny table, and a bed made of wood board with no mattress or blanket. On the bed, a thin, huddled figure, Helmuth, a boy of 17, lies awake, shivering, trembling. It's a Tuesday. The executioner works on Tuesdays. Memories drift through Helmuth's mind like clouds that obscure his intense fear of what it is to come. Slowly they shift into shapes. Helmuth, holding Muti's hand. In 1928, Helmuth and his mother stroll up Lusenweg, the Hammerbrook Street in Hamburg, where they live in a small flat next door to Helmuth's grandparents. Helmuth is 3. He is wearing short black pants and brown ankle boots that lace up. His older half-brother, Hans, is 8. Hans is wearing short pants and ankle boots, too. So is Gerard, who is 7. They are walking ahead of Muti. Helmuth worries that his brothers will get lost, or worse, that they will have fun without him. Helmuth tugs on Muti's hand. He wants to escape, wants to catch up with his brothers, but Muti tugs back. No, she says, stay close, hold my hand. I don't want to lose you. That makes Helmuth feel dark inside. It isn't fair that he has to hold Muti's hand and his brothers do not. A street, Helmuth sees this too. A noisy, crowded street. It's a parade. Brown-shirted men wearing red and black armbands and tall, black, shiny boots are marching. One swaggering brown shirt bends over Helmuth. What a big boy you are, he says. Do you want to be a soldier for the fatherland? Helmuth likes to play with toy soldiers. He forgets he is angry at Muti. He nods and tells the brown shirt, yes. The brown shirt laughs a big booming laugh. He pats Helmuth's head. A smart boy, he says to Muti, and brave. Already he wants to fight for the fatherland. And his eyes, so alert, look at how they take in everything. Yes, says Muti in a proud voice. He's very smart and very brave too. A loud bell clangs, bright prison lights snap on. Helmuth sits, stretches, it's cold. He rubs his arms beneath his drab gray prison smock. He steps across the bare floor to the corner, raises his smock, and pees into the slop bucket. For a moment, the cell grows thick with the stink from the bucket, and then becomes ordinary again. He lifts his bed against the wall, hooks it into place, and sits on the stool and waits. Another memory, 1932. It's nighttime. Helmuth is 7. He lies on his back, tucked into bed between Hans and Gerard. Helmuth hears Muti dressing for work. The smooth wooden glide of the bureau drawers. Open, shut, open, shut. His grandparents live in the flat next door. Through the wall, Helmuth hears a sonata from Opa's gramophone, a somber cello, warm and penetrating. Brahms. It is a comfort to have Opa and Oma so close. That's what Muti says. Sometimes she presses her lips together as she says it. And a help, too, since Muti works nights at the nursing home and needs someone to check on her boys. Moonlight floods the bedroom, shimmers the walls opalescent. It makes Helmuth think about God and heaven. Heaven goes on forever, doesn't it? He whispers to his brothers. It's always Gerard who answers these questions, never Hans. For infinity, says Gerard, who is nearly 4 years older than Helmuth and knows about heavenly things like planets and stars and suns and moons. Gerard likes precise words and numbers. Hans, 5 years older and with very little patience for deep discussions, is already asleep or pretending to be. How can something never end, says Helmuth. How does it go on and on for infinity? It just does, says Gerard. That's the way God made the universe, without beginning or end, in all directions. In all directions, repeats Helmuth, awestruck. It makes me dizzy just thinking about it. He stops, thinks about the feeling. It isn't dizzy, not exactly. I'm floating, he said. Then stop, says Gerard. I can't stop. I'm going to float away right this minute. Hold on to me, Gerard. Don't be ridiculous. You're not going to float away. Ridiculous is one of Gerard's favorite words. I will too. No, you won't. There's such a thing as gravity. God made that too, you know. But I am floating, says Helmuth. He rolls toward Gerard, clutches his arm. Gerard pulls away. You're ridiculous. He gives Helmuth a heave, shoves him toward the center of the bed, says in his practical voice, when you're old enough to think about infinity, it won't make you float. Now go to sleep. But I like floating, whispers Helmuth into the shimmering darkness, and he does. It makes him feel drawn to God, as if God is drawing him toward heaven. He doesn't say this to Gerard because he doesn't want the feeling to disappear. Besides, he knows that Gerard has stopped listening. That's the way Gerard is, so able to remain anchored in the world. And so Helmuth keeps floating toward heaven until he falls fast asleep. Another memory. School is out and Helmuth is sitting on the floor playing with lead soldiers. He is next door at his grandparents' flat because Muti is still asleep, tired from her night shift. He forms two lines with blue-clad French soldiers dug in on one side and gray-clad Germans attacking mercilessly on the other, just as they had fought on the Western Front during the Great War. What's the Great War that he's talking about? World War I was known as the Great War because no other war could be as big. Then World War II happened. So it was called the Great War. It's still referred to as the Great War, but they started calling it World War II once they realized that, or World War I once they realized that World War II was also going to be pretty terrible. Who is Muti? His mom. Yes. What does Oma mean? Grandma. Opa means grandpa. Germany. Gerard comes in and squats next to Helmuth. Your right flank is in trouble, he says, pointing. You can't keep your soldiers in a straight line. You must circle the enemy. Helmuth tenses his jaw. He wants to argue with Gerard. Such a know-it-all he is. But he also sees his brother is right. Gerard is always right, and so Helmuth moves a handful of Germans to protect the right flank. Gerard nods in approval. That's better. You can't think in straight lines, not if you want to win. Gerard plops down on the stiff, flat sofa and cracks open his Karl May adventure novel. Helmuth crouches over the battlefield. He signals a charge to encircle the French. He imitates the sound of artillery, exploding grenades, storms of shrapnel. He imagines billows of smoke as the brave German infantry attack with all their might. Their faces are dust-covered, their uniforms tattered. Opa returns from his midday walk with a newspaper he has bought from a stall in the market square. He stands over Helmuth. Who's winning? The Germans, says Helmuth. Are the grenade launchers on their way? Helmuth nods vigorously. Your strategy is working. The French are trapped, says Opa. As it should have been, my boy. We should never have lost that war. Oma bustles from the kitchen carrying a teapot. The sharp scent of peppermint hovers in the air. Opa sits, flaps open the newspaper, mutters about the headlines. More head cracking, he says. More fighting between communists and the Social Democrats and the Nazis. Each party promises jobs and a stronger economy. Can it get any worse? Asks Oma. Only if that lunatic Hitler comes to power, says Opa. That will mean only one thing. War. That warmonger wants to make his mark on history. Oma sits next to Opa and says, Hitler frightens me. Those crazy eyes of his, and the way he knows exactly how to bring the crowd to hysteria. For a long while, Opa and Oma sit in silence, his hand cupped over hers. Helmuth knows that they are afraid of Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi party, but he doesn't understand why they fear a man who wants to fight for Germany and make it better. Helmuth rocks back on his heels, looks at his toy soldiers. If he were a soldier, he would fight bravely for Germany, just as Hitler fought in the Great War. He knows he would. He wouldn't be afraid. Back in prison. Footsteps, a rustling sound at the heavy blue door. Helmuth takes a great gulp of air. His heart pounds in his ears. The small latched window slides open. Please, God, no, not the executioner. He sees an eye, a nose, half a mouth, half a face. The morning guard. Helmuth breathes again. Part of a prisoner's punishment is not knowing his execution date. For a second, their eyes meet. The guard pushes a cup of lukewarm malt coffee and a hunk of dry bread through the window. The window snaps shut. Helmuth rejoices with relief, gives thanks for the meager breakfast, for living to eat another morning meal. He knows letters have been written on his behalf, asking for clemency. Perhaps today will bring good news. If you ask for clemency, it means that somebody is asking for you to be basically forgiven of your wrongdoings, of your crimes. He gnaws on the hard, stale bread, thinks about the breakfast Mutti made, rye toast slicked with red currant jam made with berries that Helmuth picked himself. For supper, they ate whatever Mutti could afford to cook that day, usually turnips and potatoes and cabbage. Helmuth and his brothers never went to bed hungry. Mutti made sure of that, but there were plenty of nights he wished for something more to eat. He remembers how all of Germany was very poor and how Adolf Hitler promised to make everything better. Work and bread, that's what Hitler promised. Helmuth remembers the day Hitler was appointed chancellor, how the flat smelled of fresh rye bread and sausage and fried onions. Mutti celebrated. Everyone did. It is January 30th, 1933, and nearly noon. It's almost dismissal time, and Helmuth is sitting on the hard wooden chair in the school auditorium. He is waiting for a special radio broadcast, a broadcast so important that the whole school has been gathered to listen. At first, his classmates sit quietly. As the minutes tick toward dismissal, the boys fidget, swinging their legs, tapping the floor with their heavy brown shoes, whispering and snickering when their teachers aren't looking. Helmuth is filled with a sense of anticipation. Something big is about to happen. He can feel it. He has felt it for days. It has something to do with Adolf Hitler, he is sure. At the front of the auditorium, a fifth grade teacher turns on the large radio. It crackles, and a stormy arpeggio from the vinyl movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata bursts forth. Its ferocity underscores the day's unquiet. The teacher twists the knob, tunes to the German Reich station, the RRG. The radio squawks, and then a newscaster speaks in a whisper. Guten Tag. Good day, he says, as if he doesn't want to disturb anyone, as if he is about to apologize for interrupting the school day. But he doesn't apologize. Instead, his booming voice fills the auditorium. Reich President Paul von Hindenburg has just formed a new government. Adolf Hitler, leader of the National Socialist Party, has been sworn into office as the new Chancellor of the Reich. Martial music swells from the speakers. Something inside Helmuth swells too. It has happened. Hitler is chancellor. This is big news. The room buzzes. Several older boys and sixth graders leap to their feet. They clap one another on the back, thrust out their right arms in the Nazi salute, and bark, Heil Hitler! Helmuth is amazed at their boldness, even more amazed that not one teacher grabs them by the collars and shakes them, tells them to sit or to mind their manners. Those swaggering boys belong to Jungvolk, the Hitler youth group for boys 10 to 14. They sport brown shirts and swastika armbands, shiny belts and buckles, and best of all, daggers inscribed with the words blood and honor that glint from leather sheaths. The boys' eyes glitter. Did you hear that, Sligman? Said one boy, leering. There aren't many Jews in the school, but the Hitler youth want the schoolyard Juden-free, Jew-free. Benno Sligman ignores their taunts. He gazes stonily ahead, but two angry red splotches glow on his cheeks. The teachers ignore the Hitler youth. They are too busy whispering sharply with the other teachers, fighting over the reasons why Germany is so desperate for Adolf Hitler. It's the same grown-up argument Helmuth has heard everywhere, between his mother and his grandparents, among his neighbors in the tenement, floating out of the teacher's room at school, and even among the older boys at the schoolyard. At last, wait and see, says one teacher. Hitler will get Germany out of this mess. No more unemployment, no more inflation. He will bring jobs, food for our tables. Another teacher shakes his head. Bah, Hitler is a lunatic. He will bring war. And so the argument goes back and forth among the teachers. Nonsense. Hitler wants peace, a strong Germany. Wait and see. He will restore our greatness. The problem is that treaty. It's sacrilege.